Welcome to the JAMODI Podcast. We are all surrounded by amazing coaches and leaders, so let's get an inside look at not just what they do, but how they do what they do. After all, becoming the best versions of ourselves is JAMODI, just a matter of doing it. Coaches, the JAMODI Podcast is powered by Shoot 360. The future of basketball has arrived in Dallas-Fort Worth. Shoot 360 combines the latest sports technology with the fundamentals of basketball skill development. The result is a one-of-a-kind video game-like basketball program designed to improve your shooting, dribbling, and passing. Visit shoot360dfw.com to learn more and register for your free 1-hour workout evaluation. Shoot 360, the future of basketball is here.
And also, just this came to mind too, is remembering that sometimes it's okay that there are multiple voices and they may all have the best intentions. So I think, like for me, we can be territorial, right? Where this is the in season, only listen to me. Well, what if their AAU coach is a really good dude and does know the game and is watching our games and trying to help the player navigate even better? Like, how does it fit in with our system? Have you had these conversations? I think we have to be careful of thinking that we're the only voice that we should have. And it takes a lot of people. There's a lot of stakeholders in each of these players' lives. We're one of them. Their parents are one of them. But then they've got coaches and trainers that I think automatically us, and I'm talking to myself, automatically us thinking that any other voice isn't the right voice. I think we got to be careful with that.
Yeah, I'm with you 100%.
Love the idea of the strengths and weaknesses out of the season, working on a lot of things, but then in season, working on their strengths. I think maybe that's a measuring stick with our players is, do they know what their strengths are? And do they know, like one question I've asked players before is, do you know what it takes for you to get more playing time in our program? Like, what do you, Johnny, have to do to play more? I wonder, Coach, how many players really know that?
Yeah, I mean, I think some guys will recognize that early on. And I was telling my assistant coaches last year at Aledo, we had a player who came on really strong at the end of the year, but in that first part of district, he was really struggling because I think he was thinking he needed to do more than what we were expecting of him. And all it took was just a conversation. He had figured out his role at the first part of the year before district. He figured it out on his own, and we were happy with it. And then something happened over Christmas break and the start of district where he was just trying to do too much, put too much pressure on himself. And so all it took was a simple conversation like, hey, just get back to playing hard, being a good teammate. Like, stuff ends up finding you when you're on the floor, whether it's an offensive rebound or an open three or getting fouled and making both free throws. Like good stuff happens when you're out there and you're worried about the right things. And so, he had a big game for us to win district on the road. He had 8 points in the second half, and it was all just stuff that he was really good at, but he had to kind of find himself again. And so he figured out his role initially on his own. And then over Christmas break, he kind of forgot it. And then it took a conversation to kind of get him back on track. And so I think you can have that happen throughout a year. And I was grateful that he was, humble enough to just listen to us, even though he was frustrated, and then kind of get back on track. And then things ended up working out for him. So, and then he's going to have a great senior year for Aledo this year. So I think sometimes that's kind of the approach. Maybe see if they can figure it out on their own. And then if they can't, then we have to intervene and then just see if they're able to listen and willing to listen to what, we're trying to tell them to help them. You have a great kind of routine and, your culture with your programs. You do a great job with the 5-minute talks, 10-minute talks, all that type of stuff. But like, I have to be intentional with that because I can get, tunnel vision just like every coach. So we just schedule out times during the year where we're going to talk to individual players. There's going to be certain times of the year where I'm going to step back as the head coach and let the assistant coaches kind of run practice and allow me to kind of be on the side and just pull guys to the side. Because if I don't make time for that, then I won't do it. And so I think, we just have to be organized enough and intentional enough to have those. Like for me, I have to have scheduled times to have these intimate conversations with our players. And then there's other times like in the cafeteria or in the hallway where they'll pop up, but like I have to be intentional about it. And so, I mean, you have a great kind of philosophy with that, with your, is it 10-minute talks, 5 minutes player, 5-minute coach?
10-minute meetings from Tyron Lee from when he was at Wakeland. And
Yep.
it's been, I think it's one of the top 3 things that I've borrowed that have really made a huge difference with relationships with players. And you nailed it though. It needs to be scheduled. I use Volunteer Link. I put the times that I can talk over the days that I can talk, and I send the link out, and they get to choose the time that works best for them. And then there's obviously different things that in those 10-minute meetings, I try not to have too much of a basketball agenda with it. But in season, it typically does go that route. But I get to ask them good questions. And more importantly, they have those 5 minutes to ask me anything that they want. But you nailed it, though, Coach. I think if we don't schedule those talks, then we're hoping that these things happen and basing our game on hope. We don't want our players to do that. We shouldn't have relationships based on hope also. But then if we have those scheduled meetings and then we have the random, hey, I'm in the gym, you're in the gym. They're walking by me in there. We have we can steal more time, but at least we know that we've got a
Yeah, talking about stealing time in the gym, one of the best things that, and I've heard a lot of great things from this coach. Stephen Gentry is now an assistant at Gonzaga, and he worked for the Miami Heat. He was in the video coordinating room for the Heat, and so then he was at A&M after I was done playing, and so I worked some camps and got to know him a little bit, and he's just a basketball savant in my mind. And one thing he said, the essence of coaching that he learned from Pat Riley is one player, one ball and one hoop. And you get to know your players just being in the gym, one player, one ball, one hoop. And I've tried to use that. We had players that were on there. We had some players this year at Alito that had early release, but they would still shoot around because we had practice after school. And so I would make it, intentional. Just 10 minutes go in there and rebound for them. One player, one ball, one hoop, one coach. And that was it. I mean, that was huge in building a relationship with some of these guys. And so I think that's, maybe that's not scheduled, but you can find time for that.
I would I would definitely find time for something like that because one awkward thing about my meetings is it's in a office. I'm sitting behind a desk and I'm staring at them and they're staring at me. And there are definitely some of the players that'll show up and they don't have any questions ready for their 5 minutes. So it's literally just silence. We stare at each other and I tell them like, hey, this is your time. Well, that's awkward. I kinda lean into it, and it's good practice for them for one day when they're in an interview process, they have to sit across from a boss or somebody that they wanna get a job from, so that's good practice, but no doubt, getting with a player, having a ball, and them shooting and you rebounding, it's amazing, coach, where those conversations can go, and you can really see like, the basketball or that action, I think it's, disarming. They
For sure.
relax, they're doing something, and it's something that you both have in common. I don't know about you, I'm 43. I don't have a lot in common with these kids anymore. We don't listen to the same music. I don't know all the stuff that they do on their phones. So I'm getting older, but with basketball, we can have a connection there.
Yeah, I'm with you there because no matter where you're from, there's basketball kind of is a universal language, and there's guys that no matter where you're from, if you're in the gym with them, you can tell if they can hoop or not, and then there's a bond there maybe that is built just because you both are love a game, and so that's very
Yeah.
helpful.
The first thing that TQ talked about was team identity. And he said New Mexico State had defense as their identity. I appreciate that. I think those teams are really tough. Our identity at Faith and then also at Midway won't be defense. It will hang our hat on other things. But I think it's important to have one. I think if you watch a team and maybe you just played them or you're watching huddle or even right after the game and you wonder, man, I don't know what's the one or two things that they're really trying to do. Like what were they trying to achieve? How would I describe them? For you, starting now at Florida College, you've had a little bit of time this summer with open gyms, but team identity, culture, what you're going to have hang your hat on, your standards. What's that going to look like?
Well, let me go back to what it was like at Alito. I think it was really helpful having 1 year as an assistant at Mansfield Lake Ridge because I got to step back and relearn some things that maybe had slipped through the cracks when I've been a head coach for the last 11 years or whatever. And so one thing that was very helpful was, I looked, I listened, and I learned before I went in and just went guns blazing and started coaching. So when Kenny and Stephen Brown and I took over at Boswell, that was right after COVID. We had no choice. We just had to come in and just say, hey, this is what we're doing, and just come in guns blazing because it was a blank slate with that hard stop with COVID. At Alito, there wasn't a lot that was broken. So I was able to come in and kind of look and listen and learn and see what the guys were good at. And so we were able to kind of hang our hat on fighting and together. Those were our two sayings. And so we were going to fight and we were going to be together. And so, that fight mentality was in everything that we did. It kind of showed up in how we offensive rebounded. Our fight kind of showed up in how tough we were when players tried to cross the paint defensively. We tried to fight for our space on offense by sprinting to the stretch, and so that fight mentality was just kind of built. And so it allowed us to have success because no matter what we did, we were in a fight. There was nothing going to be easy. And our guys were just like, hey, we're going to fight for everything. And then that together piece was just the team chemistry and how we were going to, share the basketball, how we were going to, we were going to be together in our team defense. We were going to be together in helping players off the floor. And so that was kind of our team identity. And so when people saw us and watched us play, I had coaches in our district say, Coach, I've never seen a group of guys have so much fun. How did you get them to have that much fun on the bench? Or how did you get them to rally around each other so much? And I think it just was a consistent emphasis from the coaching staff, like we were going to fight and then we were going to be together. And because of those two things, it allowed us to have, in a lot of people's minds, some success. And so I was very thankful for the guys buying into that and believing in that. But it started, I had to step back first to see what the guys were good at already naturally. And then I could look, I could listen, I could learn before I came in and say, hey, this is who we're going to be. I think the guys appreciated that. And it helped that we had success early in the season, but it did help that I didn't just come in and say, hey, this is what we're going to do right now. And the guys kind of got to show me who they were first. And then I could figure out the best way to implement who I thought we needed to be successful.
I love that, and a little jealous of the opportunity you had to go about it that way, because that's exactly, Coach, how I wanted to start at Midway. I didn't want to come in and just kind of cram things right down their throats right from the beginning and get to meet them where they are. And my thought was, all right, so going to this, I can only come down 2 days a week in June because we're still living up at DFW at that point. Come down and do some skill work with the guys. And then they were in a summer league, so I would stay and watch them play that night. But I know in about 2 or 3 weeks, we got TABC. And so I watched
Yeah.
my thought was, Coach, just a skill work, because how can I move the needle the most? How can I help them and get to know personalities? It's through skill work and teaching them that way, teaching them through mistakes, encouraging them to make mistakes, creating that atmosphere that we want in our skill work. And after a couple days and watching summer league, I realized that. And Coach McDade's incredible. Like, he was a great guy, and kind of like you. I mean, I took over a program that's not in a bad place by any means, and I'm thankful to him for that. But there are differences too, and with maybe style of play, we want to play a little bit faster, play with pace and space. And I realized that there's just a difference there, and so I kind of felt like at that point, for TABC to be something that they weren't frustrated with and I wasn't frustrated with, that we needed to jump into our flow and what that looks like. And so I started
Yeah.
that a little bit earlier, but you know what I felt like every day after I left was, golly, that was a lot. Like, I just threw a lot at them, and I hope they're okay. And so I kind of talked to our assistant coaches, and we tried to meet a little bit early and have some good conversations about things. But I don't know. There's what I wanted to do, and then
Well, yeah, it was a little bit different though, because I think a lot of guys had varsity experience already. I was able to kind of build some relationships with them through the spring. So, yeah, I know every situation is different, but it did allow the guys to kind of just show me who they were before I came in and say, hey, this is who we're going to be. Luckily, the guys did have success at the TABC showcase last year and won some games, and they were like, okay, this is going to work. That could have been totally different if we went to TABC showcase and instead of scoring 95 points in our first game like we did, we only scored 40. And now it's like, well, what is coach talking about? So there was a little bit of I guess some bias there after some success in a showcase that allowed me to have a little bit more credibility moving forwards. Like you just kind of lucked out, there was definitely some luck involved with how things kind of played out throughout the summer.
Thank you for checking out today's episode. Please take a moment to subscribe to this podcast, share it with your fellow coaches, and find us on social media for what's coming up next on the JAMODI Podcast. It's just a matter of doing it.